recording this session, overview of the book of Isaiah. So if you want to go back and watch it later, you'll be able to. If you are watching this on a recording, you can email me for the handout, abramkj@accordancebible.com. All right, well, let's dive in. As the Advent season continues, we are going to look at the book of Isaiah in a 1-hour overview, which I will acknowledge from the very outset. This doesn't even begin to do justice to the book, but it will hopefully be a good starting point for understanding it. We're going to look at a few specific verses as well as an overview, and I will point us to further resources and in-app tasks in accordance that will help us learn more about the book of Isaiah. So again, any questions or comments at any time, just let me know in the questions box. So I will be toggling back and forth between this PDF that you see here, that is in the handouts section of the GoToWebinar control panel. I believe it's called handouts. If you have any issue with that, again, you can email abramkj@accordancebible.com and I'll make sure you get that. Thanks again for your patience as we transition our training platform, which was not by choice. GoTo did that, and now we know. All right, so who wrote Isaiah? This is kind of a funny question in a sense. I think we might typically just assume that books are named after their authors in the Bible. Isaiah here was one of the 4 major prophets, and you likely know that there are 4 quote-unquote major prophets and 12 minor prophets. Always worth emphasizing that major versus minor doesn't have to do with impact or prominence or popularity. It really just has to do with length. Isaiah at 66 chapters is longer than any other prophetic book. And you get the gamut of things here. It's like the Psalms in the sense that there are the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, both in terms of the narrative of the reality that Isaiah describes and in terms of what he says to it. So you get prophecies of a glorious future where God's reign has come in all of its fullness, and you also get prophecies of the earth just being completely laid to waste. So it's perfect for Advent insofar as Advent looks back at the first advent or coming of Jesus. And so in Christian tradition, Isaiah is understood to be prophesying about Jesus Christ specifically. So in Advent, you'll often find Isaiah readings appointed for different Sundays through the lectionary. And then in the second Advent, the coming again of Jesus in glory, the parousia, if you want the technical theological and Greek term for it, Isaiah points to that as well with a kind of long range eschatological looking ahead to the very end. And so Advent does that too. Advent is looking at both of those comings of Christ. And so it draws on Isaiah pretty extensively. All right, well, let's get into accordance because I just made a claim that you may want to verify. Maybe you believe me. It's factual, so it is verifiable. But the question is Isaiah really longer than any other prophetic book? And there are a few ways to measure this. We could measure this by numbers of chapters, but that would be strange because chapters can be different lengths. It does have the most number of chapters. You could measure this by Hebrew words. You could measure it by English words, although in which translation. You could measure it by verses, which even that's artificial to the original manuscript. But typically speaking, when folks are talking about how long a book is, we're either going to be talking about word count or number of verses. Number of verses, I think, is a pretty fair way to do it. So I want to show you how to use accordance to compare the length of prophetic books. All right, let me just check in. I hear someone says they can't hear. Let me just see if that's true for others as well. I want to make sure my audio, yeah, it looks like it's good from my end. I don't know how high your volume will have to be for you to hear me. But yeah, if others could just let me know in the questions box whether the volume is working. I want to make sure I'm, okay, someone else says audio is fine for them. So that may be I'm not sure what user setting that is. Okay, great. Others are good on audio. Thank you. All right, so the question is, what's the longest prophetic book? Now, this maybe it's a little bit of a rabbit trail, but it's I always think it's interesting to answer questions like this. You could say, what's the longest gospel? What's the shortest gospel? Maybe you're thinking already now about your reading plan for 2026, and at some point, knowing how long different books are could be useful. So, in accordance, we're going to just compare length of prophetic books in any Bible text. You can search for range Isaiah through Malachi. That will give you all of the prophets following the order of your English translations. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to take the Net Bible, the NET Bible. It could be any Bible really, as long as it has an Old Testament or Hebrew Bible in it. And I'm going to go to the command line. And let's just go back here and see what I'm doing. Asterisk, which is going to search for any word at all. Now, if I hit enter, it's going to give me, let's just do that so you can see this. This is a wildcard search, and it's going to say find any word in the Bible. Well, if you want to see how many English words are in the NET Bible, here's the answer: 753,672. That is not unique words, that's word count. That's very long. All right, so that's what asterisk does. Now, that's not useful as a search per se because everything is showing up. So it's really no different from just going through the text. But if you want a count, you've got it now. Well, I want to add a range. So I'm going to right click, go to enter command, and let me find range. Right click, enter command, and here is range. You can also see there's a keyboard shortcut there you can use. You could also have gone to search, enter command. We've got a whole series on searching under our webinars, which are right here under the help menu if you want to go there. So I'm going to just type in Isaiah through Malachi, and you can do abbreviations for that. By the way, if you want to see just a table of contents in your Bible, so maybe, for example, you don't know offhand to do Isaiah through Malachi. If I've got this same Bible open and I haven't run a search, I can go here to this go-to box, which will give me a menu of everything. I mean, I could quickly jump to Matthew that way without using the search entry area. But here we can see, all right, song, that's Song of Solomon, so that's poetry. So here, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, so forth. So we get Lamentations in there. That's not, I mean, that might be more considered a poetic book than a prophetic book, but that's because it was written by Jeremiah. But we're going to go ahead and just take all of Isaiah through Malachi. So this whole range is what's going to show up with the asterisk. So it will give me this same search result just with those books showing. So it may take a moment or two to run the search, but now it's run the search. We know that it's run the search. There are two ways we know. One, this, which was in black before I searched it, is now in gray. So when the font turns to gray, that shows that you have run the search successfully. Here, the word count has gone down, so 161,000 words. And now we've got all the prophets all together. So that's step one. You can slow me down on any of this. And now we're going to open up analytics. So I'm going to go to analytics, and then I'm going to go to book chapter stats. So analytics are right here where we've been looking for the the word count. Here's the section, it's in gray, but it's book chapter stats. And I've got either table or table chart. I'm just going to go to table chart. So here, book chapter stats, table chart. Now it is analytics specifically for this search. So we will see only the books that I searched. This is Isaiah through Malachi. So that's as expected. Now, this is not a very helpful statistic. So what I want to do is changed to total verses. So you can do total words if you want to, actually. So this would be the same place that you could search that way. Let's just go to total verses. And now I can see here that I've got, actually Jeremiah is longer by total verses. Let's sort by count. All right, so I've got Jeremiah a little bit longer by verses. Let me go by words. And I've got Jeremiah. I may need to correct this, although I wonder if, yeah, all right. Well, I stand corrected. See, it's always good to verify these claims. So by chapters, that must have been what I meant when I prepared this handout. By chapters, Isaiah is the longest at 66 chapters. By verses and by words, Jeremiah is the longest. Interestingly, by words, Ezekiel is just a little bit longer than Isaiah. So I guess the question really is, how are you measuring this? Isaiah is before Jeremiah, probably because of the chapter length. That's maybe the first thing you see in your English Bibles. But this might be fun to just kind of play around with and see what you get. It's also interesting. You might even, I'm just going to duplicate this tab, right click, duplicate tab. You might try this in other translations and see what you get. It's going to be roughly the same. Let's try the NIV. Here's the range. And this bar chart is still for the Net Bible, but I'm going to open up one for the NIV Bible. I can go to total words. I can sort by count. And we're going to get something very similar. This is a pretty big discrepancy in words. Some of that will have to do with translation. Jeremiah has some parts that there are different textual traditions, so it gets a little bit complicated. But anyway, here is the tool that you want to be using. It's this analytics tool. And really what you would want to do in the end, now that you know how to do this, duplicate your tab again, change this to a Hebrew Bible text, whether you know Hebrew or not. It's going to change you from left to right to left. We're going to do range, Isaiah to Malachi, same thing. This is really what we want to measure. Let's find this chart again and go to total words, organize by count, sort by count. All right, so Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah. If we did verses, we'd get Jeremiah here, and the verses will more or less map onto each other because the translation tends to follow the Hebrew, but the words will not map onto each other. All right, so yes, it is the longest prophet by chapter, not by verses, not by word count. This maybe kind of falls into the realm of Bible trivia, but I do think it's helpful and interesting, and I use this kind of search on a fairly regular basis. Let's talk about Isaiah himself. Let's just see if you have. Oh yeah, somebody says, I wonder what Hebrew scroll length is for the same question. Yeah, that is a great question. So if you have Hebrew scrolls, you would just, yeah, open them up and run a similar search if you've got them in accordance. If you don't, that would be a little bit harder to search. But yeah, you can do this any number of ways. Yeah, really interesting question. All right, so Jeremiah is a long one. We see that here. What about Isaiah? Who is he? Well, the first book names him as the author. I'm going to close these. I'm sorry, the first verse, I should say. So let me get a new workspace open. Bear with me. My accordance is not wanting to work right now. Huh. I'll just say, as I try to get accordance to work, that Isaiah, son of Amoz, is the named author. We don't get a lot of biographical information about either of these named individuals. You have maybe heard people talk about first Isaiah, second Isaiah, third Isaiah. And that has to do with the view that Isaiah has three authors, in fact. There's a great article here, and I'll just, you could copy this link or click it and open it. I'm going to just show it in a web browser here that speaks to that question. Who wrote Isaiah? And this very short, well, not very short, but it's concise. So this idea about other potential authors and this speculation, it says most scholars agree that the prophet Isaiah likely only wrote a portion of the book. That I don't think compromises anything about, kind of the theology of how we look at scripture. Maybe it's written under his name, attributed to him. It's along the lines of Isaiah. There's a lot more here to explore. I think this is a longer question. Your commentaries will address it in the introductions. This question of who wrote Isaiah. In terms of who, though, let's stay for just a moment with Isaiah himself. Whether it was Isaiah who wrote every single word or most words or some words, the first verse names Isaiah. It says, "Here is the message about Judah and Jerusalem that was revealed to Isaiah, son of Amoz, during the time when Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah reigned over Judah." This is a remarkable amount of biographical and historical information. We get a name of the kind of book. It's saying it's a message. Chazon is the Hebrew. We can see in the instant details down at the bottom. We see who or whom it's about. We see the way that this message came. It was revealed to Isaiah. This looks like the same root here. So something like a vision that was given to Isaiah. So there's something there we want to unpack in terms of like a revelation of a message. So that tells us this is revealed to Isaiah. Who is the revealer? Well, as we read through, we'll see that it's God, often named as Yahweh here. So even just this far in the book, and we see this isn't just Isaiah speaking for himself. He is given a message. A message is revealed to him, and that's what he's sharing. It's a message about Judah and Jerusalem. So Isaiah is the one who received the revelation of the message. Here's his father. And then we get the dating. When did Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah reign over Judah? Now, on December 19th, 2025, I'm guessing that many of us did not wake up with this timeline in our mind of when did King Uzziah rule. This is very easy information to find, though. All you've got to do is go to your Add Parallel pane in any study Bible. I mean, you don't even have to click through everything that opens here. You can just go to the first study Bible and you're going to get, here's the date, about 740 to 685 BC, because these are known historical figures with known dates. It is pretty easy to peg this to years and into a timeline. So we get that we're in the 8th century BC. So that's a lot of information in one verse, and it's even a lot compared to some other books of the Bible that may not give you such specific dating. So we get the dating. I know I'm kind of skipping ahead here a little bit, but the timeline of these kings puts Isaiah's prophecy in the last part of the 8th century. Micah, interestingly, was a contemporary of Isaiah. This was about 2,800 years ago. And I put all of 1:1 here in this verse. Just to read a short quote from the IVP one-volume commentary, it says, "The list of kings indicates that Isaiah prophesied for at least 40 years from about 740, so that's the last year of Uzziah, and he comes up again in 6:1, until some point after the Jerusalem siege of 701 in the time of Hezekiah, whose reign continued to 687 and 6. So notice it says at least 40 years, because it doesn't say exactly in which year of each of the reigns it began and ended. But this is pretty specific as biblical dating goes, that we've got a very, I mean, even if we have to say give or take 5-10 years, this is a very specific range, and any commentary, any study Bible just about, is going to jump right on this and give you the dating. You'll even see here that some, like this Jewish Study Bible, points you to other prophetic superscriptions. So here's Hosea. You get Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. So interestingly, right around the same time frame. Amos gives us a dating, Micah as well. So we've got some contemporaries here, and we've got some pretty specific dating. Let's just go back to Isaiah and who he is. He is named here as the son of Amoz. You could think of that as kind of a surname. Presumably, anytime the Bible gives you so and so, son of so and so, that might be because they want to highlight the family membership. There may be something specific about Amoz. It might just be to specify which Isaiah, as if to say to the audience, you all know of 3 or 4 Isaiahs, or whatever. This is the one we're talking about. Well, we don't get really any biographical information about either one. And so I would want to know, who was this guy? Who is Isaiah? Who is his father? Does this shed any light for us? 2,800 years ago, again, presumably saying son of Amoz would give you a wealth of information just because you would know who I was talking about. If I said so and so was the son or daughter of insert famous person here, that would already give you some biographical information about that person. We don't have that. And so we can go to Accordance and see, all right, well, what do our secondary sources give us? And there's just a couple features I want to highlight here for how you could use Accordance to research Isaiah or Amoz. Let's do his father here. And I'm going to go through these steps right here all at once. I've detailed them in the handout if you want to replicate this on your own. In any Bible text, you can select the name. So I just double click on Amoz. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go to, let's go to research. And I can research, this used to be called search all some versions ago. So I can search all of my resources for this name. I can search everything. I can search all of my texts, all of my tools. I can even do subsets of searches. So this can be an overwhelming menu. If you're not sure what to do, you could just search all up at the top. I'm going to just do dictionaries now because I want to go straight to my Bible dictionaries. And here is any Bible dictionary in my library that has Amoz here. And here he is as an entry in the Anchor Yale Bible Dictionary, which is a fairly long entry for someone we don't know much about. Now, this is not a very long research trail because it says the father of the prophet Isaiah. Well, I knew that. Other than his name, the Hebrew Bible gives us no information about Amoz. So I have completed my research on this person at this point. Now, of course, I'd want to look at other dictionaries. I could word search this word in the Bible, right click, search for word, just to confirm. I mean, like I said, any claim that you see, you can look up. You may see this name elsewhere. And if you do, that's where you start. So this is right that it says other than his name, the Bible gives us no information. But interestingly, he is listed elsewhere, but it's the same thing, just as the father of Isaiah. And we can scroll through these results. All of them look like they might be promising, but it's literally just son of Amoz every single time. So Anchor Yale Bible Dictionary is right. That's all the information we get about him. Now we could do the same with Isaiah. That's going to be much more profitable. Now that I've got this research window open, I can just type in Isaiah here, and I can look him up in my Bible dictionaries. There are lots of places to go. Now you're going to get in your Bible dictionaries the book of Isaiah and also the person Isaiah. So there will be a lot more to wade through here. But it may be just as well to go to your commentaries and search the introduction there and see more about him. Now, just a little bit of a spoiler alert in terms of what you're going to see there. We had the best witness. I mean, if you're thinking about who was Isaiah according to the Bible, the best witness is the Bible, and in particular, the book that bears his name. So if your question is, who is Amos? We pretty much exhausted that one. If your question is, who is this Isaiah whose book has his name? The best way to answer that is going to be to read through Isaiah. We're not going to get a whole lot of biographical information about him either, but we'll get some. And the way I might pursue this, and when I say read through the book of Isaiah, that's not exactly a simple, do it in 20 minutes exercise. What you could do is with Isaiah open, is you could just scroll through fairly quickly and see, all right, here's a prophecy. So that's great, but maybe for now, I'm just going to skip past anything that looks in this Bible indented or poetic and see if there's any prose, because presumably the prose sections will have more biographical information. That may or may not be true, but that's a starting point. So I know this might be a little dizzying as you look at it, but here I stop at Isaiah 6 because I see some prose. And I've got this in the year of King Uzziah's death. All right, so that is a specific year, and we can lean on secondary sources to date that. I saw the Lord. So this is a vision. Now, not biographical information per se, but we do get Isaiah himself responding to a prophecy. And you'll find this in your Bible dictionaries, but you can do it for yourself. So this is not an insignificant point about Isaiah, that he says, "Woe to me, I am destroyed, for my lips are contaminated by sin, and I live among people whose lips are contaminated by sin." Now, if you believe that every human being is quote unquote contaminated by sin, this is not going to be unique biographical information, but Isaiah is acknowledging it and he's lamenting it, and that may not be universally true of all people. So that's something. So I would read through this and put bullet points with this kind of thing. What can we know about Isaiah? So here's another one. Isaiah claims to have heard the voice of the Lord. And here's how he responds. So even in this section, we get a bit of character development about who Isaiah is and what exactly the nature of this revelation is that Isaiah 1:1 describes, and how Isaiah responds to it. So that's pretty significant. We could make some notes on what kind of prophet is Isaiah. How does he interact with this vision or this revelation that he receives? This well-known verse, "Here I am, send me," that's willingness. So Isaiah was humble. He confessed and lamented his sin and the sin of his people, and he was willing. And this is the message that he is commissioned to give. So you could spend obviously a lot more time on this. I'll just go back to the research search, and let's get back to Isaiah 1:1 here. You could take the word Isaiah, right click, research. You could even just search all tools or all everything, and you're going to get everything here: text, tools, dictionary. So you can navigate your way through this and see what looks interesting to you. You're going to see Isaiah, of course, mentioned not only in Isaiah, but also in the New Testament, where he's quoted, Isaiah 7:14, especially relevant this time of year. You might go to a tool like the Rose Bible Guides or Rose Bible Overview and go to Isaiah there. And you'll get a concise, I mean, this is similar to what you're getting with my handout, but you'll get the same kind of things. What does his name mean? What kind of prophet is he? What's some historical background? What's the outline of the book? Where is he on the timeline? Background, setting. And so this basically, you can see here all the references. They've basically gone through the text to give us any information we have. Isaiah was married and had at least 2 children. Well, how do you know that? Isaiah 7:3. So we would have seen that if we had kept scrolling through the text and especially looked for those prose parts. So that's all there. But yeah, that Rose Bible overview is another good place to start. Everything all in one place. Let me pause there and see what questions or comments you have. So far, we've covered who wrote Isaiah. We talked about comparing the length of prophetic books. We looked at the first verse and did just a little bit of exegesis of it, not a whole lot of interpretation per se, but started to talk about how we might research it, how we might look up Isaiah and Amos, and also I linked to this article. We talked about the dating here as well. Let me just add this while you think about if you've got any questions or comments. You can take some steps yourself in accordance. I mean, this one is just so specific that your commentaries are going to take you right to the dates, especially this specific prophecy in Isaiah 6:1. But you could also do the research search that we did for Isaiah and Amos on any of these kings. And you could look through your commentaries. And I will just very briefly show you this before we move on. You can also, we saw in Rose a timeline. They've got, I mean, this is just really helpful if you want to see what's going on here, because the kingdoms are getting divided. They're splitting up. They're going to be conquered. It said that at the very beginning, it said Judah and Jerusalem. But if you want a timeline from Accordance, you can right click on the word Isaiah, and you can go to look up, and you can go to timeline, and you're going to have to scroll this in or out. In fact, I might even close some of this other stuff at this point, but you can see where he is. I'm just scrolling in and out using my trackpad. This is a wonderful tool in Accordance. You could go to the help and just type in timeline and see how to use that. We've got webinars on that, but this is, we don't have time today to go through this, but anything in Accordance, you could do this with King Uzziah. In fact, here he is. This will help you get a sense of where you are with regard to time. So let's just pause there. We're going to move on to audience, but let me see what questions or comments you've got so far. All right, let's talk about the to whom was Isaiah first addressed. And we talked about this a little bit, but you will find as you read this that the emphasis shifts throughout the book. But Isaiah 1:1 names Judah and Jerusalem. Isaiah 1:3 gives us the word Israel. Let's just pull this up here. So here's Israel. Here's Judah and Jerusalem. Again, it doesn't get much more explicit than this. About whom is this book? To whom was it addressed? Well, here's the message about Judah and Jerusalem. And really, we could think about this as the message concerning Judah and Jerusalem, and of course, directed to them. It's not like Isaiah is just talking about them in the third person in a detached way to hear himself speak some objective reality about them. I mean, he's listened right away. I mean, you get into the second person, so it's the message about them, but also to them. So that's your audience, and we're looking here at the two nations of the now divided kingdom of Israel. And we would see that in our timeline too, whether that was from the Rose Bible overview. So you see here, we're in the divided kingdom era, or you might see that in your Accordance timeline, and you can further explore that if you want. But the northern state was Israel with its capital city of Samaria. The southern state of Judah had as its capital Jerusalem, which is where the temple was. So Judah and Jerusalem are a particular focus here. And then you'll notice too, I mean, as soon as we say, here's who this is about, as you read through or scroll through, chapters 13 through 23 in particular include prophecies against other nations. So if we jump ahead, the Lord will judge Babylon. This is an oracle about Babylon. Again, this is not just Isaiah kind of giving a history lesson. I mean, this is directly, involving them, implicating them And then as you scroll forward, you'll see more different nations or people that are addressed here. And I note too that these are not prophecies against them because they are foreigners per se. It's not like, well, because they are not God's people, we're going to prophesy against them. It is specifically because they, like God's people, have done evil in God's eyes. And so there's a truth that Isaiah teaches us. No one is immune from a prophet's words. There is no one who can say that doesn't apply to me somehow. I mean, yes, there is context specific stuff here for sure, and we want to interpret responsibly. But when Isaiah said in Isaiah 6, "Woe to me, I am destroyed, for my lips are contaminated by sin, and I live among people whose lips are contaminated by sin." And we could add to that from the context, and those people live among other people whose lips are contaminated by sin. Everybody, even the prophet himself, even God's appointed, anointed leader, is implicated some way or another by the words of the prophet. So that's important to note that yes, we've got this Judah and Jerusalem and Isaiah and the divided kingdom, and the emphasis may shift here and there. And so really there's a sense in which it's addressed to everybody. But even so, that first verse is going to give us maybe a more specific focus. And I've linked here to some suggested resources that will say much more about Isaiah's audience. Part of my goal here is to answer some of these questions today, but also help you answer them further yourself. Like I said, we not even begin to do justice in this time to Isaiah. But there's Message of the Prophets in Accordance. All of these go to Accordance links. The New International Commentary on the Old Testament, Isaiah volume. That's part of a series, but it's also available individually. I've always loved How to Read the Bible Book by Book by Fee and Stewart. You could go to Isaiah and you're going to get similar to what you had in Rose. You'll get some I think they call it orienting information up at the beginning. Yeah, so we start with the orienting data. So content, prophet, date. There's the hyperlink. They want to show their work, so to speak. And then emphases, so theological emphases, which again, if you read through all 66 chapters, you would probably have no problem filling this out for yourself. You may be working on something, maybe preparing a Bible study for tonight and not quite have time to get through all 66 chapters. So you might rely on something like this. But then this particular resource, How to Read the Bible, this is book by book, and then there's How to Read the Bible for all it's worth. Book by book gives us kind of a broad overview, specific advice for reading Isaiah. So it's going to talk about the history. I know I'm scrolling quickly through this, but just to give you a sense. And then you get a walk through Isaiah. This is a broad commentary, I mean, very high level commentary, and it's intended to be that, to give you a sense of what's going on in each of these sections. So here are the other nations, as mentioned, 13 through 27, Babylon, Assyria, Philistia, Moab, Damascus, Cush, Egypt. Again, no one is immune, but it goes back to God's people as well. How to Read the Bible book by book. And then we looked at the Rose Bible overview. So there's a lot of history to unpack here in terms of to whom Isaiah was first addressed. We also want to ask the question, what did Isaiah care about? And again, you'll find that in those resources that I just linked to, you would be able to answer this question fairly easily just reading through the book. I think historical background is helpful for this, but Isaiah also speaks for himself, I think, in ways that translate across 2,800 years of time and continents and oceans of space. So you'll get a lot of this just on your own without seminary training, without commentaries, and those other things are helpful. I note here in the handout, despite being nearly 3 millennia old, many have found Isaiah to be timely and relevant in an ever-changing world. Prophecies about the Messiah and the new age the Messiah would bring are particularly relevant during Advent, a season of waiting for Jesus. And as I mentioned, in Christian tradition, Advent remembers the first waiting for Jesus. So, for example, the waiting that Isaiah's people were doing, and the waiting that people now are doing for Jesus, which Isaiah also addresses. I don't have the source for this quote, but Isaiah, it might have been Luther or somebody else, but Isaiah has been referred to as the Bible in miniature. And that's because you've got major themes of scripture found here. And I note some here, like I said, any of your resources are going to have this. The most rewarding way to answer this question will be to read the book for yourself and take notes, whether that's on your computer or note cards or a notebook or whatever it is. But just an overview. God is creator. The sinful condition of humanity. Remember the contaminated lips in Isaiah 6. How often the rich and powerful abuse their positions. The need for justice for the oppressed. The salvation and hope that the Messiah brings. Even the word salvation is embedded in Isaiah's name. The call on God's people to live lives of holiness, truth, justice, and love. Isaiah speaks of a sovereign God who can and will make all things right. The promise of a new heavens and new earth with citizens from every country. Now, this comes toward the end of the book, and I'll just note here, and I'm not here to preach, so forgive me if I do a little bit. This is especially remarkable when you come to this promise at the end of the book that everybody is here or could be here potentially in this new heavens and new earth, especially remarkable given how many nations have been prophesied against. And now in this new heavens and new earth, even folks from those nations and God's own people who have been contaminated or sinful, whatever language you want to use from Isaiah, they are all possible citizens in this new heavens and this new earth. And you could look at this yourself as you scroll through here. But I think this packs a real punch, having read through the book already and seen, everybody is implicated basically. And now everybody is, there's the new heavens and the new earth. Citizens from every country can be there. So I'll stop preaching before it turns into a sermon and just note this, and then we can pause for questions or comments. Isaiah's name means the Lord saves. That you could find any number of ways. I bet you won't get very far in your commentaries before you find it. You can triple click on that word to get into your Hebrew lexicons. That may be useful for finding the meaning, but you won't go very far in your commentaries or study Bibles before you see, for example, that Isaiah in Hebrew means Yahweh saves, or Yahweh is salvation. So is that a historical name? Is Isaiah 1:1 seeking to name a real person, Isaiah in time and space, or a metaphorical one that just carries the meaning of the name? Well, to me, it seems pretty clear we're trying to do some literal historical situating here. I mean, this, I suppose you could disagree with that, but to me, this feels pretty compelling. That we've got, he's linked to a family. You're given a time with real historical characters. So Isaiah is being painted here as a real historical person, and the meaning of the name is significant. Yahweh saves. This may not come across to us in English as we read this, but in Hebrew, that would come across from the very beginning of the book. And in fact, that truth is like a refrain throughout the book. All right, so just briefly then, how can you use Accordance to research more about Isaiah's theology and themes? Again, I would say read it straight through. You could consider making your own outline of Isaiah as you do that. Maybe read a chapter and or read a section, or get to a point where you feel a shift, and then kind of jot down like, all right, the first 15 verses we're doing this, and then just jot down a couple words, put a reference, and then move on. That will take a long time with the book of Isaiah, but that's a great way to understand what it's about. There are outlines in Accordance Commentaries will have plenty. There's also a tool called Outlines of Bible Books, which is available in just about any collection in accordance. And you'll see here that you've got some broad headings like Introduction to Isaiah's Ministry, the Assyrian Crisis, the Babylonian Crisis, and that's the end of the outline. Now, you may decide that you don't want to broadly describe the book in terms of two crises in Isaiah's ministry. Maybe you want to outline it a different way, but this at least gives you a good starting point. And you can see here, by the way, for this judgment of the nations and hope of restoration, they're all listed here, with Jerusalem in here too. I mean, again, Isaiah is, no one is immune. So it's not like he sneaks Jerusalem in here, but I think that serves as a reminder that this judgment is for all people. So that outlines tool is good. Here's a resource: Golden Gate's Theology of the Book of Isaiah. Again, you've got it, I assume you've got some commentaries in your library. So you could start there, but I'm not actually. Maybe I don't have this book. I thought I did. Yeah, it looks like I don't. But that is a book specifically about Isaiah's theology, and that's available in accordance. I talk about word study via live click. So you could, to study theology and themes, you could take any word. Let's just find one, like understand, for example. I could right click, search for, I'm going to search for the key number so I get the Hebrew there. And I'm going to add that range, and I'm going to do Isaiah. I'm going to close these other windows. I've got 21 uses of the word understand. So understanding is a theme in Isaiah. And by the way, it's know here in English, but it's the same Hebrew word that was initially translated understanding at the beginning. So maybe I trace that theme. And again, I just right clicked and searched for the key number, added the range. That's one way to do a thematic study. You could also, similar to what we did before, you could do a word search. We did the asterisk already with the range of the book, so we know that. Let's do that. Let's do it in English just to keep it accessible. So I'm going to go to asterisk, range, Isaiah. All right, so this is familiar now. Everything's bold and red, not useful by itself, but we see 35,018 is the word count. And now we're going to go to the same analytics window, but instead of the table that we did before, we're going to go to word count totals. Let's see, word count totals. We're going to go to analysis. And this gives us an alphabetical list of all the words, which is probably not super helpful, but this one is count down, which shows us we've got total number of verses, total words, number of different forms. So if we want to know unique words, and now here's a list. I probably cannot conclude anything theologically from the use of the word the and of. But as you scroll down here, you see the word Lord. And again, we're doing this in English. You can do this in Hebrew too, same way. But the word Lord is used 496 times. Now, on the one hand, I may say, well, yes, of course, it's the Bible. On the other hand, that's a lot of times to be naming God. So there is a very strong divine focus, so that the word Lord is used even more than some of these pronouns or prepositions. I mean, that's not nothing. So you can scroll through this, and this is not, a scientific way to find the themes of Isaiah, but as you scroll down, you'll see like people is used 158 times. There's something to that too. What does that mean? Which people? Well, we saw it's really all people, and that word in the plural too. Maybe there's something there that Isaiah's prophesying in a communal way. Here's God again, time 84 times. Armies, heavens. Now, again, this is going to be translation specific, but you might just scroll down here and see when you get to these words. Egypt is mentioned, Assyria a bunch of times. That can be a good way. Children, 35 times. That can be a good way to use accordance to start to research theology and themes just by frequently occurring vocabulary. Let me pause there and see if you got questions or comments, and then we'll wrap up in just a couple of minutes. All right, we'll leave some more time at the end for questions or comments. Let's talk about reading the book of Isaiah, and I'll just read what I've got here in the handout. As with the other Old Testament prophets, Isaiah called God's people Israel back to their covenant commitment to God. Isaiah embodies the prophetic role of comforting the afflicted and afflicting the comforted, if you've heard that phrase before. At times, that movement between comforting and afflicting, so to speak, can feel sudden, even disjointed. So I offer this by way of reading strategy. And again, you can see other resources will do this too in accordance. So I just note that we have this as a single book, but keep in mind that what we have now as a single book is a collection of orally delivered oracles or prophecies which Isaiah would have given throughout his life. To me, it's helpful to think of this as a collection of sermons. And when I think of it that way, I think that's historically accurate in terms of how this would have been delivered. I mean, it's not as if Isaiah had the printing press and published this book with a major publisher and sent copies to everybody. I mean, these are orally delivered oracles, and so when I remember that, I'm not as concerned or disjointed when I see these prophecies feeling like they're just going all over the place. At the same time, Isaiah had a lot to say, and so there. I mean, if you read it straight through, it is going to feel like there's this back and forth. But that's where I think having a sense of the overall picture can be really helpful. Broadly speaking, you can divide the prophets. I mean, this is really oversimplifying it, but you can think of woe and weal. I learned this from Doug Stewart in seminary. He's co-author of writing or reading the Bible book by book. Woe being the bad news, weal being the encouragement, the good news. Again, that's an oversimplification, but there's often oscillating back and forth. And so you might just ask yourself, is this good news? Is this bad news? And even what sounds like bad news can be good news. If Isaiah is talking about the earth is laid to waste and evildoers are destroyed, is that good news or bad news? Well, it depends on if you're an evildoer or not. It depends on where you are in that equation. But even asking that question, I think, can help. And I'll just close with this. Here's an outline of Isaiah. This is from word for word from the literary structure of the Old Testament by David A. Dorsey. This is not available in accordance, but I've just typed it out and put it in here. I find this a really great tool. And I think if you have something like this, I mean, you could even just write this out on a note card and stick it in your print Bible or copy paste it and have it open while you read through Isaiah in accordance. This is helping me to remember where I am. And the Bible headings will do that too. But do know, as with other prophets, you're going to get what feels like a lot of back and forth. And that's, par for the course. And it's because, it's not like Isaiah sat down and said, all right, I'm going to write this book straight through. We've got a collection, and that itself is worth looking at. How do we get this book? Why is it in this order? Who did it? But if we think about this as a collection of originally kind of out loud given oracles or prophecies or sermons, that will help us understand how we can go so quickly from one nation to the other, or from good news to bad news and everything in between. So I'll stop there and we'll take questions this last couple of minutes. Just to recap, we've looked at who wrote Isaiah and how you can use accordance both to compare length of prophetic books, research names. We looked at we looked at when Isaiah prophesied and how you could use accordance for dating Isaiah and other books and figures. We asked the question, to whom was Isaiah first addressed, and saw that it's got a longer answer than just the initial folks mentioned early on. Looked at some resources you can use in accordance. Looked at what Isaiah cared about, so theology and themes, and again, how accordance can help you there. And then we close with the strategy for reading the book of Isaiah as well as an outline. I'll just remind you that if you want this handout, abramkj@accordancebible.com, you can email me. If you have been here live, you will get this recording, assuming that it worked. So I'm really hoping it did. I did press record. Like I said, new platform changes here. But you should get the recording. And if you're watching this on the recording, you can email me at abramkj@accordancebible.com. The last thing I will say is